Hi everybody, thanks for coming out. We'll go ahead and get started now. Before we jump in, I did want to really quickly thank Digital Garage, the location we're using right now. Huge supporters. Get a round of applause. It's a lot of work getting a space together. We really appreciate all their assistance. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention our sponsors who supplied the pizza and beer that you're drinking and eating right now. So Axon PR, they're a PR firm out of New York that owns a lot of Bitcoin companies. You can check out the website, it's a huge list. And CoinSource, they're a Bitcoin ATM. I always like to ask, who here does not have Bitcoin? Okay, so it's about this, people on the live stream, there were like 3, I think. So that's good. It's getting more and more regular. It used to be I asked that question, like half the audience raised their hands, so that's cool. But if you want to get more, or you want to get an easy way to get some, CoinSource, they have ATMs in the city. I think they have like 3 in San Francisco now, maybe even more since I last checked. And you just put cash in, Bitcoin comes out, and it goes the other way as well. Then there's also Dash. Dash is a huge support of our community. They've been giving us money for a while, so really appreciate it. And I like that kind of behavior when a coin gives back, so that's cool. So, and then of course Digital Garage, who lends us the space and helps out in other ways. So with that, we're going to do 2 quick lightning talks, just 1 minute. People can come up and talk about a project they're working on, and then we'll throw it to Ty. So a big round of applause for our first lightning talk.
First of all, thank you, Travis, and thank you everyone else for being the host. Thank you for folks coming. I have 1 minute, so I'll make it quick. My name is Tony. I'm co-founder of a company called the Betoken, B as in the bumblebee. We are basically building a decentralized home sharing platform. So think of decentralized Airbnb. Just want to make this real quick. Mr. Travis, pick a number between 1 through 18. Or 1 through 18.
12.
12. Number 12, we have Riz. Is Riz in the house? Mr. Riz? No? Riz?
I should have memorized the list.
Oh.
I got friends here.
I'm not sure if I can read everyone's handwriting, but if you don't hear from me and you want to get in touch, my email is tony@thebetoken.com. Thank you everyone so much for your time.
Thank you. And then one more. You want to come on up?
Yeah. All right, thanks, Travis. Hi. Sure. Yeah, thanks. This is Alec Monopoly, an artist that's on our website. So we started a website. It's called archain.info, and what this website does is it uses the Bitcoin blockchain to track the provenance of art pieces, which means tracking the ownership of art pieces, so that you can track the authenticity of it. You can prove ownership all the way back to the artist who registers the piece through our website on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's the perfect use of an immutable database. So in any event, if you go to our website, I encourage you to check it out, archain.info, and on that website, unfortunately, we don't have a white paper or a roadmap or a bunch of team members, but what we do have is a fully implemented, fully launched website with over 20 artists. Some of the top artists in the world are registered already on our website.
Yes, I'll have to do.
The website is currently tracking over $500,000 of art pieces.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so this is an actual true launch. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. So anyway, we're actually having a meetup tomorrow night at the Workshop Cafe on Montgomery Street. If you want to learn more about our project, we encourage you to come. And if if you're interested in coming, please just go to the Meetup website and RSVP so that we know how many people are coming tomorrow night. All right, again, it's from 5 to 8 at Workshop Cafe on Montgomery. All right, thanks. Thanks, Travis.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. I want to invite up Ty Walker. He is a cryptocurrency miner, data analyst. I've known Ty for a while now. Whenever I have a question about mining or altcoin mining, he's my go-to person. Really thrilled he's giving a talk here today. Please, big round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Travis. Thanks to the sponsors as well for sponsoring this. And let me get my presentation up. So yeah, how to mine cryptocurrency with the magic Bitcoin wizard name. How many people, show of hands, have traded Bitcoin for altcoins at some point in your life? Okay. And how many people have mined cryptocurrency before? All right, awesome. Okay. That is more than the last time. Okay, so just a quick disclaimer. This is going to be like kind of typical. Hopefully anyone that gives a talk like this would do this. I can't legally provide financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. So any names of companies or cryptocurrencies that I mentioned in this presentation are for example or education purposes only. Just because I happen to mine Bitcoin private doesn't mean you should do that or shouldn't do it. So the opinions are my own. Don't get hacked. Limit your counterparty risk at all times, which you can do by securing your private keys via Ledger, Trezor, Digital Bitbox, and use two-factor authentication everywhere, whenever possible, always. And trust nobody. So in this space, like just because Travis thinks I know a lot about mining, doesn't mean that like I'm the end-all be-all resource for mining. So always be skeptical in this space, as I'm sure you are aware. If you were watching C Classic today on the charts, you probably know that things pump for no reason at all sometimes. So just a little bit of terminology slides. So there's a lot of miners here, so this may be kind of redundant for some of you, but for those of you that aren't miners, I just want to go through this list. So a mining pool, we'll talk about, is a managed collection of miners that is run by some pool operator. So it's a collection of people that are mining either multiple coins or a specific coin. A hash is basically the key to mining a given cryptocurrency block. Hash rate is the rate at which hashes are generated by a miner. So a computer that is mining a given cryptocurrency, its hash rate is basically how many hashes per second, which like in the case of Bitcoin is like terahash or petahashes per second, or terahashes per second. And then there's net hash rate, pool hash rate, worker hash rate, which I'll get into. ASIC, which stands for Application-Specific Integrated Circuit. So think about Bitmain or Bitfury, the people that mine Bitcoin, like Antminer, S9 would be a typical ASIC basically. And these are hardware specifically built for mining, so non-GPU hardware that's been built to make to do only one thing. So you can't run World of Warcraft on these machines; you can only mine with them. And a GPU, a graphical processing unit built by AMD and NVIDIA. Algorithm is the typical or the specific cryptographic algorithm associated with a given coin. So, like as an example, Bitcoin is SHA-256, Zcash is Equihash. Doge is script, Litecoin script, etc. Block time, the amount of time between blocks. Difficulty is a numeric value of how hard it is to mine a block, which fluctuates with the intent to keep block time constant. There's an asterisk there because if you were involved in Bitcoin last year, you will know that during the Bitcoin Cash fork, block time doesn't always remain constant. Sometimes it can be much longer than intended. And the block reward finally is the amount of cryptocurrency awarded to the miner or pool that solves a given block. All right, so a brief history of mining. So Bitcoin mining started when Bitcoin was invented by Satoshi Nakamoto. The genesis block of Bitcoin was January 3rd, 2009. Basically, mining is a task that's performed by proof of work. And what proof of work essentially is an expensive computing task with a cheap verification of success. So the task to mine Bitcoin is technically hard in terms of a computer has to do a lot of work to do it, right? But the success of whether or not a given miner has successfully mined a block of Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency is cheap for other miners and nodes to verify. When Satoshi released Bitcoin in January 3rd, 2009, initially it was only CPU mineable, so like a CPU that's on any computer, laptop, desktop, whatever. And then it progressed into GPU mining, which is using graphic processing units like gamers had, like myself. I used to be a competitive video game player a long time ago, really old and slow now. I sometimes play still, but and so I always had a gaming computer. And then finally it went into ASIC territory, basically, where ASICs are really all that mines Bitcoin right now. And then Litecoin came after Bitcoin October 7th, 2011. I don't remember if Litecoin jumped directly into GPUs, or if it started with CPU also, but it's in ASIC territory now. And so like, basically, because there are different algorithms and because ASICs are application specific, there's different hardware to mine different algorithms. And so that's the case for like SHA-256, script, and a couple of other algorithms. And then everything else essentially is GPUs. And GPUs are what I specialize in, basically, is either using my own hardware or renting hardware on the cloud to mine profitably. So where are we today versus 2011? So in 2011, there were a handful of coins that were out there. Litecoin was out around at the end of 2011. And what has happened essentially is like a hardware arms race. So like we're at a point now where mining is largely centralized for the main coins. So Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum are mined essentially in large data centers throughout the world, like Inner Mongolia, Iceland, etc., where power is cheap and people can get a lot of real estate, park a bunch of hardware, and so it's a very different. I don't know if Satoshi envisioned this, but it's a very different environment than what, if you originally read the Bitcoin white paper, what you would have thought would have happened, right? You would think that everybody with a computer would be mining Bitcoin and like it would be fully decentralized and there'd be millions and millions and millions of miners out there, but it's not really the case anymore. And so there's also, now there's also like 800 plus mineable coins. This is a total guesstimate. I know that as of October, there were 1,400 and change different cryptocurrencies that existed from some analysis that I was doing. I'm going to guess about 800 are mineable. A lot of those are, S-word coins that you should probably never mine, but there are a lot of coins out there. And then one thing that I like to note that I don't really cover in detail in this presentation is the concept of proof of space and proof of capacity coins. So Burst was the first one to ever come into existence, and then there's also ones that are actually utility coins for like cloud storage, so like Filecoin, Saya, storage, etc. And so that's an interesting thing that I don't really cover in here, but it'll be interesting to see which direction things go in that way, because it's essentially like, is burning power better than destroying hard drives and putting them in landfills later? In terms of what is better for the environment. So, because I have like power consumption guilt as a miner every once in a while, living in California. So if you are a miner, you probably, well, if you're in crypto, you probably made a lot of mistakes. You've made bad trades, you've mined the wrong coins, you've lost your Trezor, you've lost your private keys or whatever. And so I like this quote from Westworld, which hopefully a lot of you have seen, which is, mistakes is a word you're too embarrassed to use, you ought not to be. You're a product of a trillion of them. Evolution for the entirety of sentient life on this planet using only one tool, the mistake. And so, like, I've made a lot of big mistakes mining over the years, and it's important to not feel too bad about them and just learn from them. And so I'm going to tell a story of a mistake I made that hopefully is the worst mistake anyone in this room has ever made. So I mined Bitcoin in the beginning. Basically when I read about Bitcoin, it was around 2010. And I was a competitive World of Warcraft player at the time, and I had a day job. And so I would basically come home from work, play World of Warcraft, turn on my mining rig, turn it on the mine, turn my rig on the mine, go to bed, go to work, wake up, play World of Warcraft, do this over and over and over again, right? I did this for a long time, like 9 months. And I mined a lot of Bitcoin. I was solo mining lots of Bitcoin at the time. And I mined somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 plus Bitcoin. And then one day, my machine wasn't running properly anymore because Windows sucks, and so I had to format my machine. It's like anybody that's run Windows, every once in a while it's like a biannual thing. You gotta just wipe your rig, reinstall Windows so you can play your games again, or just use your computer for computing purposes. And so I formatted it, and I didn't consciously think like, this magic internet money is stupid, I'm gonna delete my private keys because it doesn't matter. It wasn't on the checklist. It was like, back up the photos from college, back up my music, back up my movies, not my private keys or wallet.dat file for my Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin was worth like 50 cents at the time, and I realized that I had done it, and was just kind of like, okay, well, I know that like deep data recovery services exist, but like really, like what am I gonna, like, am I gonna send this off and pay someone $500, $800, $1,000 to recover this data that was on a spinning disk, a hard disk, that's only worth $200. And so then I moved to San Francisco in 2011. I met a bunch of people in the Bitcoin space, the cryptocurrency space. Bitcoin started taking off and becoming worth more money. And I was like, okay, I should probably consider actually exploring sending my drives that I still had to a data recovery service to see if I could get that wallet.dat file. I was at work one day, and my uninterruptible power supply for my rig became very interruptible for some reason, and while it was writing to my RAID array, my power went out. And it basically corrupted all data that was on the drives, and just hosed everything, like all of my data is gone, right? And I did go through a third-party data recovery service, was not able to recover any of the data. I still have the drives. Maybe I'll meet some wizard one day that will be able to like bless them and give me my private keys, but until that day, I lost basically $1.83 million as of yesterday's price, which is a little more money today. And so there's a few lessons in this, right? One major lesson if you're a miner is never, ever, ever, never store mine cryptocurrency on the rig itself, like ever. Like have your wallet file on ideally like an air-gapped machine that's like you open the wallet file, you install the wallet, you get your address, you send the money to it, you delete the wallet.dat file after backing it up to a USB, turn the Wi-Fi off, close it, and put it in a box somewhere and just leave it. And if you put it on the rig itself, it's kind of like as stupid of a thing to do as like putting, I don't know, like a very valuable porcelain doll in a race car and having Michael Schumacher driving around a track really fast. Like, it's not a good idea because it's probably going to break. Like, it's a thing that's designed to go really fast and hard and it might blow up at some point. Don't put a valuable thing inside it, right? Another lesson is use hardware wallets if possible. So back then, hardware wallets were possible in the sense of like, you know, like a Trezor or a Ledger or a digital bitbox or something like that, but you can like get a USB drive and encrypt it using like Veracrypt, TrueCrypt, whatever encryption tool you want to use, and put the private keys and wallet.dat file on it and encrypt it and just back it up somewhere. And then any computer you need, like you can use any computer to get your crypto back. And put them in a safe place. Put them in a place that isn't by your computer. Put them in a place that no one knows where it is. Put it in a place where you never tell anyone where it is, except for perhaps your wife. In case of my untimely demise, it would be beneficial for her to know exactly where I kept my crypto. So do that stuff and don't be like me. Yeah. So what do miners do, right? A lot of people don't really know what the mechanism of mining is. So essentially, miners use hardware to try and guess a cryptographic hash of block data, vote on network changes, and a few other things. So in the case of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is really the most simple cryptocurrency out there, right? It's a slow block time. Well, I call it slow 10-minute block time. And all Bitcoin does is basically process and secure a ledger of transactions that occur. And so that's what miners do, essentially, is they basically try to find the next block of Bitcoin while securing the network. Litecoin basically functions the same way, Doge the same way as well. Any like first gen, if you will, cryptocurrency and modern cryptocurrencies that are focused on just ledger maintenance, like this is all they do. In the case of Zcash, they do some additional work, like in terms of obfuscating, like privatizing transactions, like Monero as well would be doing miners do additional work to make sure that transactions remain private, or as private as the sender intends them to be. But there are also some other applications now, right? So Bitcoin, like basically everything I said about what Bitcoin does, plus like computation. So running applications, rendering things, like the Ethereum network, basically. Like Ethereum processes a ledger, but it also has a bunch of applications running on it. It also serves as a method of, paying for tokens from other networks, like sending them around, like via gas. Golem is interesting as well. Golem is basically a decentralized rendering network. So like if you're a small like art shop, like 3D rendering shop in New York or something, and you can't pay for AWS, you don't want to pay for AWS, you don't want to run your own hardware, you can actually just have Golem do Blender tasks for you, which is pretty cool. And then finally, as I touched on in the beginning, there's Bitcoin plus storing data. So decentralized cloud storage options are available. I'll tell you right now that mining for these is really not that profitable right now. I have not figured out a way for it to be profitable. Like as an example with Burst, Burst is actually supposed to be more profitable than the rest of them, and all Burst is a cryptocurrency. It's not a storage platform. And you get like 1 burst per terabyte per day, which is like not a lot of money. It's like it's really, I like the idea, but it hasn't been monetized in a way where like people like the idea of having AWS and just being like, AWS is where my data is, or Google Cloud is where my data is, or Dropbox or whatever. And so like it needs to be more competitive price-wise for people to be willing to like put decentralized data on the cloud. and you know, and they don't want to pay people like me enough for me to want to do it. So, in terms of understanding how mining works, mining is a sort of like indirect method of training. Like it is basically finding the Coinbase coins, so like the coins that are generated out of the blockchain, the freshest, if you will, coins that exist. But in terms of doing so profitably, you have to know how to trade to a certain extent. So I'm going to go through my trading slide here. So if you live in the United States, which I assume most of everybody in this room, if not everybody in this room does, there's like 3 pass-throughs to getting to Bitcoin. I mean, you can also use the Bitcoin ATM, as Travis mentioned earlier. But for the most part, this is what people do. So you go on Coinbase, you go on Kraken, you go on Gemini, you buy your Bitcoin or Ethereum, or Litecoin in the case of Coinbase. And I think Kraken you can buy like Ripple and some other stuff. And you get your base cryptocurrencies, sort of like your tier 1 cryptocurrencies, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, right? And then, maybe you hold on to those and just like roll the dice and see like how's this going to pan out in 10 years or 5 years or 1 year or 1 day when it's no longer short-term capital gains. Or you say like, I've seen the Wolf of Wall Street, I know how to trade, I can do this, it's no problem. And so you basically send your Bitcoin to Bittrex or Poloniex or Cryptopia or whatever, there's so many exchanges now, and you buy Cardano or Lumens or Monero or Lisk or Decred or Bitcoin Private or Doge, and you start trading those, and like you go back and forth, you end up back to Bitcoin, maybe you made some money, and that's generally kind of like the circle of life of crypto trading, basically. Mining is sort of similar but different. So the way mining works is that people like me, instead of spinning Bitcoin, though I do spin Bitcoin with cloud mining, and I'll touch on that in a moment, typically miners, like the classic miner, is spending electricity and US dollars up front on hardware to mine cryptocurrency. So basically they are buying either the machine that's up top, this guy here, which is an Antminer S9, which is a Bitcoin miner, an ASIC Bitcoin miner, or they build a GPU rig like this guy right here, which is, I believe those are AMD GPUs, 6 GPU rig, and you mine cryptocurrency. And how do you do that? Well, there's 2 ways, right? You're either part of a pool, which is these are a bunch of friends sitting in the pool, hanging out mining, or you're solo mining. So if like you have a data center and you have a lot of hardware, you can potentially solo mine, or if you're mining some obscure altcoin that just launched, you can solo mine. But for the most part, most mining is done by pools. So collections of individuals that are working together to land blocks of a given cryptocurrency. And so then the next step is kind of where it gets tricky, right? So there's 2 ways essentially to mine. You either are mining Bitcoin, you're either mining Bitcoin, Litecoin, or Ethereum directly. You're mining some altcoin directly, or you're mining through a pool that does auto-conversion into whatever cryptocurrency you like. So like Zpool is an example of this, where I might mine Equihash, like an algorithm to Zpool, but I choose to get paid in some other like some other cryptocurrency, like Verge or something like that. Or you can have it auto-converted to Bitcoin. And that's basically how it works in terms of a visual, and I'm going to talk way more about it as we go forward. Mining pools, basically. So mining pools there are a lot of pools out there right now. I have listed like some of them here, but there are so many that it's impossible to fit them all on 1 slide. It's probably impossible to fit them all on 3 slides. So I just picked some that I've used that I consider reasonably reliable. And so they're kind of broken up into categories, right? So single coin mining the coin of your choosing. You're like, I want to mine Bitcoin, I'm going to mine the Bitcoin blockchain. And you could do that on Slush Pool, you could do that on Ant Pool, or you could do that for Litecoin on Litecoin Pool. And then on Supernova and Mining Speed, those are altcoin mining pools where you're like, I'm going to mine Zcash, or not Zcash on those, but I'm going to mine like Mona, the Japanese cat coin, which exists. I don't know if you knew that, but it's like, yeah, I like it too. It's like Japanese Doge with a cat. It's just funny that it exists. And so like you choose basically on these pools, like I'm going to mine this coin. This is the coin I want to mine right now, and you're mining direct to that blockchain. Multi-coin mining, aka multi-pools, is the term that you'll probably hear. is where you're mining an algorithm. So like you're saying, like, I have hardware that's good at mining Equihash. And I'm going to point this hardware that's good at mining Equihash to this pool, and the pool operator is deciding at any given moment what blockchain to be mining. So it's like, oh, Z Classic is pumping today, and difficulty hasn't scaled with the amount that it's pumping, so we're going to mine that blockchain. And I'm just mining that algorithm, and I'm getting paid in whatever I choose. And this is kind of where you're optimizing for what your hardware is good at, essentially, for the most part. I mean, there's some times where like you might use AMD hardware for Equihash or something like that, but like for the most part, you're just trying to max your hardware performance and point it somewhere, and then let somebody else make the decisions for you in terms of profitability. And it works sometimes. So examples of this are Zpool, multipool.us, 2miners.com. So then there are different reward structures. The two top ones are the most common. Last in shares is common on most altcoin pools, and pay per share is common on some Bitcoin pools. But essentially, the way it works is that like when you submit a valid share, so like when your computer comes up with a possible valid solution to mining a block, that is considered a share. That like a counter goes +1, you just mined another share, and then the reward structure is like paying per the last in shares since they mined the last block, or since the round ended. It's complicated. That's why there's a link under reward structures. I'll share this presentation. You can click on it and read all about it because it's complicated. All right, so cloud mining. So before, let's get a little beer here. So cloud mining is similar in a lot of ways to mining with hardware, but very different in terms of the beginning of it. So there's a couple of different ways that like cloud mining works. Let's do a show of hands. How many people have heard of Niceash? Okay. How many people have heard of Genesis mining? All right. And mining rig rentals, if you've heard of that, it's the same idea as Niceash. Okay. So cloud mining is broken up into contract-based and order-based, essentially. Contract-based is something like Genesis mining or Hashlayer, where you're basically saying like, I'm going to pay this amount of US dollars up front. I'm going to rent this amount of terahashes or whatever per year from you guys, and net whatever Bitcoin comes out of that, and you give them your US dollars, and that's the end of it. And it just runs, and you give them a wallet address, and you get paid the wallet address, and that's kind of the end of the game. I don't actually do this. But I have heard from some individuals that I trust that they've gotten some generally good ROI doing this, so it is an option. And so that's something to consider. I can't really comment on it much more other than like answer questions about how it works, because I haven't actually like used my money to mine this way. Order-based is what I focus on mostly. So order-based is where you pay up front in a given cryptocurrency for hash rate. In the case of Niceash, it's Bitcoin only. In the case of mining rig rentals, it's Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and Dash. And basically, you either rent via a fixed rate. So you say, like, I'm willing to pay this amount of Bitcoin per whatever hashes per second. And you give the amount of Bitcoin that you're willing to put into that, rolling the dice to mine whatever you're trying to mine. And then the service tries to kind of like match that hash rate, give you kind of a consistent hash rate over time. And in fixed orders, on Niceash are limited to 24 hours. They're also limited by you cannot start them with an API, which is annoying, but you have to manually start them. In the case of mining rig rentals, you can't start them via API, and they're not really limited by length. And it's a little more expensive usually to do it this way with Niceash. You're going to usually pay a little more than like the median kind of weighted price is in the standard order book. But it's a nice way to kind of like fire and forget mine, where you don't have to worry about being outbid and your hash rate dropping or paying too much and because everybody's price went down or whatever. And then standard orders, which is like a Niceash thing, is like, think about an order book on an exchange where it's like people are like, I'm willing to pay this amount of price for Litecoin with Bitcoin. Same idea, except people are saying like, I'm willing to pay this amount of money per hash per second. And and basically if Niceash deems that profitable for the miners, then hash rate floods in and everybody kind of gets their orders filled. And there are bots that kind of manipulate these order books. Not only bots that like adjust their prices just for the sake of trying to maintain profitability, but there's like straight up, I think, manipulation going on in these order books where prices will be artificially driven up to like get people to like have their hash rate like stop, and then people want to raise their prices. And the thing about Niceash is that you can raise your price by any amount at any given time, but you can only decrease it once every like 90 or
10 minutes.
Sorry, once every 10 minutes, you're right. And you can only decrease it by a fixed amount. So it's like, for Equihash, it's like 0.001 BTC per mega solution per second, I believe. And so this is like right for exploitation. So basically, the reason I bring this up is that it's not easy to like mine. It's like very easy to lose money renting on Niceash. I do it and I make money doing it, but it's like the margins are pretty slim. And so it's not something where it's just like, oh, I heard this guy talk about mining, it seems easy, I'm going to go throw some Bitcoin in a Niceash and make a bunch of money. Like, it's not gonna happen. You're not going to make money the first time. If you do, email me and I'll high-five you and buy you a beer or something. And so in terms of counterparty risk, I don't know if many of you have heard of Niceash, so you probably know that Niceash got hacked in December, and everyone's Bitcoin was stolen out of Niceash, including mine. And so there is, of course, the same kind of counterparty risk with a mining solution like that as there is in exchange, because your Bitcoin, you don't have the private keys to that Bitcoin. It's sitting on Nicehash's servers, right? So like if they get hacked and compromised, you can lose all your stuff. Niceash has actually made good on this. They've like been paying people back, which is cool. And they haven't fully paid me back yet, but like it's getting there. Like it's fine. Like I probably would have figured out a way to lose that money at some point anyway. So like it's kind of like a good insurance policy. Like put it in my money market for Bitcoin or whatever. Question back there?
Yeah, I'm just going to borrow what you just said. If you pay back really slowly, I know how it's going to be trying to do, but it's like for me, it's being broken so slow. It's just like, yeah, we'll get money back, but you don't have a date that you know you're going to see this money back. And
yeah. Yeah, so that for anyone online that didn't hear that, or any of you guys, they have like a payment plan that isn't a plan. Like it's like there is no plan. Like it's basically like we're gonna pay you guys back, trust us. And so for me, it's kind of like an expectations thing. Like when they got hacked and my money got stolen, I was like, well, that's gone. Like it's just kind of like I'm never gonna see that again, and I need to use this service. And so the fact that they're paying me back at all is like kind of refreshing. So like I've given them like a little bit of credit that they're paying me back, but yes, I agree, it is going very slowly. And that can be very frustrating. I lucked out, I didn't have a lot on there. I had just, I had just finished a bunch of orders and like, so I didn't get like cleaned out or anything, but a lot of people got pretty wrecked, so. This is probably gonna be very hard to see, but this is an example of a Niceash order book. So this is Europe over here and America over here. This is for Equihash. And so basically you set a price per mega solution per second and a limit of how much hash rate, maximum hash rate that you want. Very important to focus on setting your limit. If you ever mine a Niceash, don't set it to infinity because you will run out of money really fast if you do that. And also that's just not a good way to mine. Usually. Difficulty algorithms are pretty good at increasing the difficulty when hash rate floods the network, so don't mine to infinity and beyond. And then the speed that you're getting paid. And so this is kind of like if I were to set a standard order, I would select the pool that I want to use, I'd set my price, my limit, etc. Put in my 2FA code, set up a 2FA code if you use Niceash or any service so that no one can steal your stuff. And that's kind of like what it looks like. I'll just breeze through this slide. So like kind of just the conceptual idea behind mining is that like trading is like harder for me than mining is, and that might sound weird to people, but it's just the way it is. I've been mining since like a long time, and like it just makes sense to me. When watching what the networks do, watching difficulty change, like my brain just gets it. Whereas trading, like there's a lot of emotion involved, like emotions that come up, right? Like in terms of like when to buy in, like FOMO and stuff like that. And so trading is like you're spending USD on Bitcoin, or you're spending Bitcoin on whatever altcoin to buy something at a price, and when you buy it, you've got it, and it's yours instantaneously, like it is yours. Like it's still on the exchange. You got to move it to your own wallet, but it's effectively yours at that point. Whereas mining is different because like you're mining to the future. Like you're basically like, I want to mine this thing, and even if you land a block, like let's say I'm mining like Z Classic, right? Even if I'm like rewarded like whatever my share of the Z Classic block is, I'm not actually going to get paid that Z Classic to my pool wallet until like an hour from that point. And then I'm not going to get that to my local wallet until like 5 minutes after that, depending on my payout structure, because it requires confirmations, like confirmations that your pool actually mined that block. And so you're kind of like, you're spending US dollars essentially, rather than spending cryptocurrency, which has a few advantages, right? Like, if you like decide like, oh, I like Stellar and I think it's going to go up in value, I'm going to spend my Bitcoin, but you bought your Bitcoin at $6,000 and it's now worth whatever the hell, $9,400. That's a $3,400 capital gain that you kind of have to account for just for the privilege of buying Stellar, right? And so there's a tax implication there that miners can basically say like, well, I'm spending US dollars on hardware, I'm spending US dollars on electricity, and those are my expenses to mine, basically. And so it's a little bit of a different operation, and it's a different calculation than trading profitably. Unfortunately, with rented hardware, I get to go back into the game of having to consider capital gains, because if I spend Bitcoin to rent, I'm basically spending Bitcoin, right? Like if I give Niceash my Bitcoin to rent hardware, I have to account for any capital gains that I like realize at the point in time that I spent that Bitcoin. And so it's just math that you have to do to figure out like how to not screw yourself on tax day, which hopefully we all survive when we're here and not, eating ramen noodles somewhere. So yeah, so I talked about order base, talked about that. Okay, so we're good. All right, I'm gonna kind of skip this slide. I'm gonna skip it. Okay, so there's a few different ways to decide what to mine, right? There's like the fanboy, fangirl method, where it's just like, oh, I like this coin. It's got a cool logo. I think it's going to go up in value, and I'm just going to mine it. Like, I'm going to support it, mine it. Or it's like my friend's project or something like that. I'm going to throw a couple of my GPUs at this project. There's like the going long, or spec mining is what you'll hear called on Twitter, where it's, pick a coin you think will be worth more money later and mine it, which kind of defines all of mining, but what it means really is like coins that just launched. So like coins that like have a Qt wallet, and that's the only way to mine. It's CPU mineable, or maybe GPU mineable through the wallet, and it's not even listed on an exchange yet, and there's no plans for it to be listed on an exchange yet. And that's kind of like, an example would be Ravencoin, like that just launched not too long ago, and like my buddy Jackson happened to just be like, hey, check out this Ravencoin. And I just was like, okay, downloaded the wallet, ran it. 24 hours later, I had 99 blocks, and then like it went up in value for no reason, or a reason, I don't know. And like it's like the most profitable 12 hours of mining of my life. And so like that's the thing that you'll hear. Like there's a guy on Twitter called Not So Fast, and he like does a lot of spec mining, and he's like really knowledgeable about mining. So follow him if you want to learn more. And then there's the instant gratification method, and this is like what a lot of I think data center miners do, though I'm not totally sure, where basically you're mining if you're a GPU miner, you're mining what is worth the most right now relative to difficulty, because like when price goes up, difficulty goes up, so like there's a happy medium in there. And you're getting to BTC and then maybe going to US dollar immediately to pay your power bills. Like maybe it's a portion of your mining where it's like, this is my my income. Like my cash flow, and this is essentially how Zpool operates, like or two miners or multipool.us, where they're deciding what is worth the most relative to Bitcoin at any given time, and they're mining that, and then they're paying you in whatever you choose. And then there's easy mode, which is mining for a service like Niceash or mining rig rentals, where you're basically just pointing your hardware at these services that are then renting your hardware out to others. And so they're basically saying, like, we're mining the most profitable thing at any given time, which is actually only relative to how much people are willing to pay to rent, essentially. So, like, if some noob is like, oh, I want to spend a lot of money mining Equihash right now for no reason at all, then Equihash value, like, prices go up, and a lot of, like, 1080 Ti's and NVIDIA cards are mining Equihash. And so that's like pretty easy, because it's like you just install an executable, niceash.exe, and you run it, you benchmark your machine, and then you just like let it go. And it's pretty cool because you can even set it to like only mine on idle. So like if you use your machine as a workstation, but it happens like you're a gamer and you have two GPUs in your machine. You can pay off your machine in a year like easily, or at least your GPUs, by just like setting it to idle and like mine only on idle, and when you get up to go make your lunch or whatever, it mines for a few hours, and when you go to bed it mines, and that way if you forget, if you're forgetful, you can like kind of have a constant influx of BTC that way. And then there's the advanced method, which is the combo move, which is combining the above in a way that is maximizing profit, right? And so mining is really like challenging, and the reason it's challenging is because like when you're trading crypto, it's pretty easy to like look back in time and be like, oh, okay, well if I made this decision, I would have made way more money. Like if I bought Ethereum Classic instead of Monero, I would have made 10 grand more as of today, right? If I made that decision. Whereas mining is a little harder because like you can look back at what difficulty was, and you can look back at what net hash was, and look back at value, but you still can't really know for sure like what you would have been mining at. Especially if you rent like me and you throw a lot of hash rate around, because sometimes like I'll mine obscure coins and throw a ton of hash rate at them, like not 51% attack, but like I'm not attacking, but not like over 51%, but like a lot. And then all of a sudden, some other miner will be like, oh, I guess I should mine this too. And like, Whalecoin is like my famous example of this. Like, no one was mining it. Like, it was my friend's project. I decided to mine it. And then all of a sudden, like, the hash rate doubled again. Like, I doubled the hash rate, the net hash rate, and then the hash rate doubled again. For like no reason, because someone saw it and was just like, oh, that makes sense. Sure, like I guess I'll mine that. So you got to be careful, and it's just really hard to like look back in time and know, what you could have done differently until you start building tools to help you like have that. That's where the data analyst and Ty Walker comes in and looking back in time. So many of you have mined before. So I kind of talked about this. Like you can own your own device, whether it's building a GPU rig or buying an ASIC. You can rent. You decide what cryptocurrencies to be paid in. Benchmark your machine. So if it's GPUs, like you want to benchmark it and see like, okay, is it better at Equihash or whatever? Because like there's going to be a relative reward associated with how good your machine is at mining a given thing. Like AMD GPUs traditionally are better at mining Ethereum than NVIDIA cards are to a certain extent. Pick a target pool that meets your needs. Maybe you just want to be big in Bitcoin. You don't want to deal with managing a bunch of altcoins. I kind of like, I'm considering going back to that world because like managing a bunch of wallets and stuff is kind of a nightmare to a certain extent. Pick a tool that meets your needs, and then basically, mine to it. Or, like I said, Niceash, mining originals. I think if you have ASICs, you can like rent them out as well. Like Antpool, I think, does that. Anyway, so before I give these presentations, I like to do like a little mining competition. So I take two of my GPUs, and I pick different coins to mine. And mine them at exactly the same time and exactly the same throughput. So like the hash rate was basically as exactly the same as I could make it with these two cards, which are functionally identical. One's water cooled, one's not, but like it doesn't matter for the purposes of this anyway. So I thought, why not mine? Bitcoin Private was a fork of Z Classic. Why not mine Bitcoin Private and Z Classic at the same time and see what is more profitable to mine? And so I was mining Bitcoin Private on Supernova, and Supernova kind of like, I was not getting the payouts I expected, so I switched over to mining speed. And then I was mining Z Classic and Supernova. Power cost was about 56 cents per card for the duration of this mining run, which is about 19 hours. Or not 7:12, that's supposed to be, yes, it's 17 hours, it's supposed to be 5:12 p.m. Obviously it's not 7:12 because I can't go into the future yet. And so basically the earnings were for Bitcoin Private $1.35 for the 17-hour run, and for Z Classic $6.45. And the only reason I do this is just like to show like if you were to just make a random decision like I'm going to do this, like you can get such widely different results, right? Like you can just like you can mine for 12 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, and never land a block. Or you can mine for like a few minutes and get paid a bunch and then like not get paid for the next 5 hours. Like there's a lot of dice rolling, like if you're like D&D style, like a lot of dice rolling that's involved in this. It's just kind of like there's just a lot of like randomness associated with just the probability of landing things. So. I like this. I saw this on Twitter. I don't know. I like Equihash coins. Obviously, I have NVIDIA hardware, so I mine a lot of Equihash. And so I've been mining Z Classic for a long time. And I saw this thing, which was like, Z Classic is pumping today. For whatever reason, Z Classic was like forked into Bitcoin private, and now it's pumping again for some reason. So Z Classic went like this, and this guy was like, Z Classic is approaching the classic Arby's hat formation. So anyway, that's Arby's hat. Yeah, this is not technical analysis, this is a joke. It's a joke. So variables that influence profitability. So you have network difficulty, network hash rate, pool hash rate, your share rate. Block time matters, so like if it's a slow coin like Bitcoin, 10 minutes, or something faster like Doge is 1 minute, I think. Bitcoin or Z Classic, Zcash is 2.5. You know, all these things matter. It's like you know, a bunch of numbers that you throw into the bucket that determines what your profitability is. Selecting your payout coin, like, you know, sometimes you want to get paid in Bitcoin just because like it's convenient. Sometimes you get I choose to get paid in like a significantly devalued coin, like something that's tanking because it's just like maybe it will go up again. So you buy the thing that's, you know, in the red via mining some other thing that's worth money, right? And you can do it that way. Market price, volatility, absolute randomness is involved in you know, profit influence. Horsepower, cost, rig efficiency, risk of being hacked, counterparty risk, and human error, as I touched on in the beginning. So this is a slide, I gave this presentation, well, a variant of this presentation in December. So this is old, this is like from December. But this is kind of like for people that aren't miners, to show you what the idea of difficulty in a graphical way. So this is Verge, which say what you will about Verge, but I have mined Verge in the past. And this is the chart for Verge in December. And if you notice that, like, you know, it's going up in value, right? But if you look, what's below that is the difficulty chart. So it's the numerical value associated with the difficulty of mining a block of Verge, right? And what do you see? Like, difficulty is scaling with price, right? Like, it looks like difficulty is scaling with price. In an efficient market, this would always happen. It's like if mining were totally efficient and people like me were robots and only made the most efficient decisions, then this would kind of always happen. It doesn't always happen, but it is sort of like the norm, essentially, where it's like if something is worth more money, more people want it, and if more people want it, more people mine it, and if more people mine it, it's harder to mine it, basically. So, yeah, taxes. So I wanted to put this slide in because my taxes were like an absolute nightmare this year, and I talked to some friends, and they seem to have been more of a nightmare than anyone else I know. So maybe not yours, but I'll tell you why it was so bad. So first of all, I'm not a financial advisor nor an accountant. This is not tax advice. Consult an accountant if you want tax advice in this realm. So according to the IRS, a receipt of mined cryptocurrency is income. Whereas with trading, if you realize a capital gain, like you buy Bitcoin for something and you sell it for more dollars, that's a capital gain. It's a different tax structure, right? US dollars spent on hardware and electricity is an expense. And the sale of coins at a price higher than your cost basis, like whatever it cost you to mine something, is capital gains. And cryptocurrency spent on rentals is also an expense, except you have to pay, except if you mix your mine coins with like, okay, sorry, I'm getting to wrap it up. Anyway, it's hard. It's a nightmare. So like you have to basically figure out what your cap gains are for whenever you spend something on Niceash. And so you have to compartmentalize your mining from your trading and stuff like that. So just think about these things, like just kind of think about it if you try to get into this world or you're already in it, like there's a way to like set things up so that it's a lot simpler. Like I built a tool to do this for myself. Maybe I'll open source it one day, but like it's difficult. So it's a frowny face type of deal. I'll show the slides with the Meetup thing in the link. So if you're not a miner yet and you need resources, there's a bunch of resources, so like miners for AMD and NVIDIA only miners, AMD miners, profitability calculators and APIs that you can use, hash rate rental sites, GPU management software, etc. All those links should work. One warning, miners are executable files. You run an executable file on your computer, sometimes it contains malware, trojans, keyloggers, etc. Always keep your antivirus up to date. Only download miners from known sources. GitHub preferably. Use it at your own risk. Scan stuff. If it seems shady, it's probably shady. Don't run it. Okay, that's the end. Yeah, thanks for bearing with me through that. I really like mining. It's interesting to me. It started as a hobby, and I'm now trying to approach it as like a source of income. And I'm open for questions at this time.
Yeah, we want to make sure we left time for Q&A. Who wants to go first? All right, and just make sure you wait for the microphone when I'll bring it around for the live stream people.
So I was wondering, what are good benchmark tools for different video cards, different algorithms and coins?
Sure. So a lot of the miners come with like a parameter that you can run, like a benchmark parameter. But actually, like the Niceash miner is pretty good for benchmarking. Like it supports a lot of the algorithms, almost all of them, and so like it's pretty good for just like running it, selecting all the algorithms, and just setting benchmark. And then like if you live Python, you can like write all the stuff down in like a Python file, and then that way, like when you are talking to APIs, like cool APIs, you can know like what is most profitable at any given time. Yeah, the Niceash miner is a good solution for that.
So first of all, thank you for taking the time and sharing all this business. I wanted to ask, the first thing is about difficulty versus market price. Because what I've observed, for example, if you look at Litecoin, even the last, extreme price appreciation towards the end of 2017 and past, when the price appreciated, the overall cash capacity of the network increased a lot. But when the price tanked, it didn't change much, which to me says, because people are invested in hardware or whatever it is, it's not as elastic as a perfect market would be. So all this capacity is sitting there, and the worthiness of mining Litecoin has really become much worse than it was just a couple of months before. Have you seen it like previously? Is this like how it usually happens?
Right, so that's an interesting point, and because I focus a lot on GPU mining, I don't notice those things as much, perhaps. But it totally makes sense because, like, the thing with ASICs is that's all they do. They mine cryptocurrency. You can't. I mean, you can sell it on eBay, or like mine some obscure script coin. But for the most part, like you buy a Litecoin miner and mine Litecoin, and so like people with ASICs like have less agility than I have. Basically, like they have more kind of perhaps consistency, but like less agility. Whereas like if Verge tanks or Z Classic tanks or something like that, I can just go mine something else. Like I can mine any number of things, and so that totally makes sense that like difficulty could remain like kind of flatline, even if price it like tanks, because people still like have all their hardware sunk in and have their data centers and stuff like that, and just decide they don't want to turn it off. People do mine for a loss. Like you can mine for a loss on given days. Because you're speculating. So, you said you had another question?
Yeah, if it's okay. Just as a more general conclusion, would you say that mining, of course, is very cool, it's a cool hobby, but obviously there are very big players in the market today that are very sophisticated and making a lot of investment. Do you think like building like a small business around mining is sustainable for like a handful of people coming together and doing some mining operation as a passive income play, or do you think the market has become too competitive for something like that to be really viable?
It's definitely feasible because I know of like a handful of people that are doing it. I'm working home magic internet money miner, like that's kind of like my thing, and like it's probably not for me going to be like enough to be a full-time job in the end, like commensurate with like what I would like to be paid working at like a company being a data analyst or something like that. But my focus is like building my tool out to be able to kind of like go and do this stuff, and I go somewhere else and work, and it just makes me side income. But it is hard, especially like in California where we pay 18 cents a kilowatt hour. Like you got to have cheaper power if you're going to even have any hope of, like I managed to mine profitably at 18 cents, but it's not easy. And like, there are individuals that have places here that don't pay for power, and that's definitely the way to go. Like if you were thinking about doing that, you need to find somewhere to park your hardware that power is cheap, for sure.
Two-part question regarding noobs getting into this space. What should a noob expect in terms of US dollars when getting into the space per month? And can you share any inspiring stories of noobs making bank? Thank you.
So yeah, so the first part is that, I mean, it depends. It's hard to say U.S. dollars, right? Because like U.S. dollars it's not the number that we look at when we are calculating how much we're mining. Like everything is related to King Bitcoin essentially. You know, if you mine for Niceash and you have like, let's say you build a rig, put two 1080 Ti's in it, you know, you're going to probably net somewhere in the neighborhood of, I would say today, probably like $4 a day if you were mining on Niceash, and more money if you were more agile and mining, like speculatively mining altcoins. But, you know, if prices go up, then that US dollar amount goes up. As for stories, yeah, like when I built a rig last year that's just 2 GPUs as a workstation, and I was able to pay it off in a month by mining Hush, which is like an obscure fork of Zcash, because I liked the branding, and I thought it was like good branding, so I decided to mine it speculatively, and then it like went to the moon, and I ran my calculator, and it was like near exactly the cost of the machine I just built, and I sold it all and paid for it. So like, it can happen, like, you know, if you have a home theater PC with 1 GPU in it, you could definitely like pay for the GPU and probably the machine in a year just by running it. Like you just set the power low to keep it quiet and cool, and you know, as a hobby, it's like you can definitely like make a little side income that way. It's just like mining isn't a way that you're going to get rich unless you like just land the right moon shots, and like you can land the right moon shots trading. So like it's a lot of work to get to the kind of same end result to a certain extent. But, yeah, sure.
Do you still plan on using Niceash after the heist?
I still use Niceash. I keep a lot less money on Niceash.
Follow-up question. Is it insured, Niceash?
No, they're not even based in the United States. They're based in Slovenia. So, like, I don't really know, like, what that deal is. But what happened with the reimbursement is basically they got, well, what they say anyway, is that they got investors to come in essentially and, like, give them Bitcoin over time to repay the people like us that, like, got hacked and lost our Bitcoin. But there's no insurance that I know of, like, no, it's just kind of like, there's no insurance really if Poloniex gets hacked, like, you know, like, there's no insurance to reimburse you if Poloniex gets hacked and you lose your Bitcoin on Poloniex, so. Sure. Back here?
What do you think the eventual impact of quantum computing used for cryptocurrency mining could have on the cryptocurrency mining environment as a whole?
That's a little computer sciencey for me. I personally, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know that there are risks associated with like especially like if you are generating wallets with like low number random seeds, like there's definitely risks with quantum computing cracking stuff. But Mr. Palmer over there could probably answer this question.
So Job 256 is susceptible to quantum computing. So, when quantum computing does become, it's still really expensive, and you know, nothing going to happen tomorrow. But in a decade, when it's more prevalent, then it'll be an issue. They'll have to switch out the mining algorithm. The good news is that a lot of modern hashing algorithms, like even SHA-3, has some quantum resistance built into it. So it would be pretty trivial to require a hard fork to network for Bitcoin specifically. Some of these newer algorithms as well that are being used in some of the altcoins are already quantum resistant.
Get the mic back to that salt room.
Yes, since GPU mining is your specialty, do you find that there are any specific drivers, video card drivers, NVIDIA specifically or AMD, that are more, let's say, effective than others? And go along with that, what about like operating system distributions, Linux distributions, Windows versus Linux versus Mac?
So you know, basically, I'm kind of lazy in the driver realm. I use the latest, actually use the latest drivers from NVIDIA. I haven't really had any problems with that, and I haven't really seen, I've done the like driver game of rolling out drivers to like try and increase my hash rate a little bit, but it's like, I don't really play that game. It like causes problems. Like I'm a gamer still, so like if I want to play PUBG, like I want to be using the latest drivers. But there are optimizations there, like, and you'll. It's not something I can just say like release 2. whatever is the best driver for mining Zcash, because it's going to be specific to a specific miner. So like, for example, there's a new Aquahash miner out that I just found out about today, and it asks for like a rollback of the video driver with a specific CUDA driver to be optimal. How optimal, requires testing. And the thing is that like at a certain point, it's like, you're either mining or you're optimizing. And like, if you're optimizing, you're not always mining. And so like, the key is kind of like always be mining. Like, be mining as much as possible, And if you're like testing and crashing your rig and doing stuff like that, you're not mining. So like, it's a game there, and I'm not going to say that I'm like the oracle and like optimizing it, but I like just use the latest drivers, basically.
Are you doing consulting with like pay you, and if you do, how to reach you?
Well, you can reach me. I have like one. Yeah, I mean, yes, I have like a small consulting thing with someone, but for the most part, no. Like, I love like teaching people about this stuff, so like we can talk offline if you have specific questions and want to connect with me. My email is ty.walker@gmail.com, or you can do @Yorktronic on Twitter, which is in this presentation in the first slide, and DM me. My DMs are open on Twitter always, and yeah, ty.walker@gmail.
Any other questions? Okay, it's actually perfect timing. Please, everyone, big round of applause for Ty. Thank you much for coming. So we still have beer, and we're about to put ice cream out as well. So almost that. And you're free to hang out and mill around while we want everybody out the door on tonight. Thanks for coming out.
Stop the live stream here.
Bitcoin's about to test 10 grand.
I know, while you were giving your talk. Also, Decred went up 64% while you were talking.